Hi, I'm Leon Lovelace, and this is Unstoppable Force. Now, I need your help. I need you to go to my GoFundMe campaign. I'm going to put in a link in the description box below, because I need you to go there and donate to my campaign so I can do this show full-time instead of just part-time. Okay, I haven't talked about this too much because I knew it was pretty obvious, but the Republicans, they came out the huge tax cut plan. They want to brand it as tax reform, but it's really just a tax cut bill that they're getting ready to pass. And I have this from the Huffington Post. I'm going to use a couple other articles too. Alright, but Republicans finally unveiled their tax reform legislation Thursday, because this article's old, with a draft bill that would dramatically cut taxes for corporations and the wealthy. GOP legislators generally stuck to their already released framework for the legislation, lowering individual and corporate tax rates while eliminating most individual deductions. But they also showed a willingness to jettison major aspects of their plan in order to get a bill through Congress. While Republicans have been dead set on repealing the so-called death tax, the new bill wouldn't immediately do that. Instead, it would double the amount of wealth not subject to the tax and institute a full repeal in 2024. The law currently applies only to states transferred at death worth more than $5.49 million for individuals and $10.98 million for couples. By delaying a full repeal, House lawmakers may be signaling to their Senate colleagues that they're open to keeping the tax in some form. House Republicans are less moderate in reducing the corporate tax from 35% to 20%. And that's a huge cost to the American taxpayer because there's already way too many corporations that have a shitload of loopholes, so they're already paying way less than 35% taxes. Plenty of huge corporations are paying zero taxes to the federal government. So for the few that are actually paying 35% or close to 35%, to have them drop down to 20, that means all that tax burden is going to go onto you. You and me are going to be paying that. So we're going to be getting fucked over because they got to make sure they pay their sugar daddies for all those campaign contributions they got during this this election cycle. There was some discussion about phasing in the cut or making it temporary in an effort to reduce its almost $2 trillion cost over 10 years. But the GOP draft bill would immediately and permanently lower the rate, something President Donald Trump had been insistent about. Now I hear a little bit of talk about how, if tax cuts are permanent, then there's no way to raise them because there's not enough political will to raise taxes, because of course when you talk about hiking taxes up, a lot of people start groaning and saying, oh my gosh, this is so shitty and awful, I'm going to pay so much of my hard-earned money to the government. But if you paid attention to the Democratic primaries, all you got to do is say, we're going to raise the taxes for the corporations and the wealthy people because they're not paying their fair share of taxes. You and me, just the working and the poor and the working class people aren't going to be getting a huge tax hike. The middle class, they may get a slight tax hike, but the huge amount of the tax hikes are going to the big corporations and the wealthy people because they just got tax cuts a few years ago, so they need to actually give back to the American people, and that's what you have to keep pounding. But since of course the Democrats are bought and sold off by the big corporations, they haven't been doing that, so a lot of people just automatically say, oh, you can't do it, but you fucking can. You just have to have the right message to say, there's a lot of shit that we need to fix. We need to create more jobs and fix the infrastructure. We got to make sure we're cleaning up the soils from all this pollution all these corporations have been just spewing out over the last 30, 40 plus years. We're going to tax them heavily and making sure they're cleaning up their act and they're not just polluting our air, our water, and our soils all across the United States. We're going to raise taxes on a whole bunch of shit so we could fix a lot of the issues we have with the water pipes, to make sure that each and every single person in the United States has clean, safe drinking water. so on and so forth. Alright, but here's the short list, because the GOP tax plan cuts corporate tax rate from 35 to 20%, phases out a tax on super wealthy estates, makes more wealthy families eligible for a child tax credit, and keeps top tax bracket of 39.6%, but sets the rate at a much higher income level. And don't for a fucking second believe that the Democrats wouldn't raise or cut taxes for the corporations like the GOP is right now. Because just back a few years ago, this is from cbpp.org, Center on Budget and Policy Priorities. The budget deal that Obama made back in 2013 made permanent 82% of President Bush's tax cuts. Okay, and it was the American Taxpayer Relief Act of 2012. Okay, and the Joint Committee of Taxation on Taxation and Congressional Budget Office estimate that making permanent all of Bush tax cuts would have cost $3.4 trillion over 2013 to 2022. That's if Obama and the Democrats made all the income, capital gains, and dividends tax cuts first enacted under President Bush. The state tax at the levels that it was at in 2012, and the increase in the cost of patching the alternative minimum tax caused by the other Bush tax cuts. And JCT estimates show that ATRA makes all but $624 billion of those $3.4 trillion in tax cuts permanent. Okay, and only 18% of the Bush tax cuts were able to expire, and it was $453 billion over 10 years. Comes from the expiration of cuts to the income, capital gains, and dividend tax rates, or follows with taxable income above $450,000 for married couples, $400,000 for singles. $152 billion comes from allowing limits on personal exemptions and itemized deductions to return for filers with adjusted gross income above $300,000 for married couples and $250,000 for singles. And $19 billion comes from raising the estate tax rate to 40% from the 35% rate placed in 2012. So there you go right there. A bunch of Democrats had to sign off on this Taxpayer Relief Act for President Obama to have signed that back when he was president. The important thing that's going on right now is that the Senate, this is from Politico.com, that the Senate Budget Committee voted to advance the GOP tax reform bill on Tuesday on a party line vote, because they were able to pick up a couple other senators to approve it, and one was Bob Corker from Tennessee, Republican, and Ron Johnson, Republican from Wisconsin.